So that gives us a season total of 5.6. Is that the worst cleanup we've ever done? Broke another record. You guys' worst cleanup ever. Worst cleanup ever. Nailed it. One bad cut and Parker's entire gold empire could come crashing down. He struck it big last season with over 12,000 ounces of gold. But now the pressure is higher, the risks are bigger, and the gold is nowhere in sight. This could be Parker Schnabel's biggest disaster yet. It all began in 1896. The Klondike goldfields just outside Dawson City changed everything. Over a century later, that same dream is still alive and Parker Schnabel is chasing it harder than ever. 50 miles southeast of Dawson sits Dominion Creek, a massive 7,500-acre claim that Parker staked. Last season, this spot made headlines. Parker and his crew uncovered a jaw-dropping 12,000 ounces of gold in a rich deposit they called the Money Pit. But this season, Parker's not looking back. He's betting everything on pushing that gold-rich streak even further, heading north into a new zone called the Long Cut. It's the only section they've managed to strip so far, and Parker believes it could hold over $7 million worth of gold. That is Goulder Run, which was a super-rich creek, and where it dumped into Dominion, I'm guessing was, in this area right here. Sounds like a gold miner's dream, right? Well, here's the catch. To reach his massive 10,000 goal for the season, Parker's crew will need to move and wash a mountain of dirt. We're talking rock, sand, gravel week in, week out. The math is brutal. They need at least 430 ounces of gold every single week for the next 6 months straight. That's not just tough. It's never been done before. Not by Parker, not by anyone on his crew. As Parker himself puts it, we've got a lot of gold to find, and it's not going to come easy. His team knows it too. There's pressure, there's exhaustion, and there's Parker, a boss with what they call unrealistic expectations. But hey, that's the only way Parker knows how to roll. This season isn't just about mining, it's about survival. Parker's crew is facing the most demanding season of their careers. They're being pushed to use more ground than ever, and Parker wants it done smoothly without hiccups. That's a nice idea, but easier said than done. The reality, everyone's worried. It's not just the gold they're chasing. It's the tight deadlines, the rising costs, and the non-stop workload. Slewing is now priority number one. Every minute matters. As the team sets up Big Red, their massive wash plant near the leftover gravel piles from the old money pit, they're holding on to hope. Parker believes there's still gold in those piles, and he's ready to gamble Big Red on it. But here's the real problem. They've already burned through a ton of money just getting this far, and now the pressure is closing in. The one thing going in their favor is that gold prices are up. But that only helps if you actually have gold, and right now, Parker doesn't. We've got a lot of gold to find. It's not going to come easy. We're in a situation where there's a ton of work and unrealistic expectations from a boss that likes to have unrealistic expectations. Roughly a mile and a half up the valley from the original money pit, the crew had moved into the Long Cut, the one area of stripped ground they were depending on. Mitch, one of Parker's key operators, was now working on a critical task, removing the thick, stubborn layer of overburden that covered the pay dirt below. This pay layer, buried beneath sand, clay, and gravel, held their only shot at hitting the season's ambitious goal. But things were already off to a rocky start. Despite early optimism, the operation wasn't going the way anyone had hoped. The pace was slower, the pressure heavier, and the challenges more intense. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just another mining season. It was a defining moment for the entire company. Every decision, every hour lost could tip the scale between record profits and financial disaster. On paper, targeting those leftover gravel piles from the money pit seemed like a smart move. They had produced gold last season, and Parker believed there was still more left to be found. But there was a downside. Diverting machines and crew members to those areas meant pulling vital resources away from the long cut, their main zone, and the one most likely to deliver high-yield gold. It was a strategic tug-of war. Chase what might still be in the old cuts or double down on the new ground that had yet to prove itself. And with time already slipping away, the team didn't have the luxury to do both. The season wasn't unfolding gradually, it was hitting fast. The crew hadn't expected to be installing equipment this early in the day, but the pressure to get running pushed everything into high gear. The wash plant, known as Big Red, the centerpiece of Parker's operation, had to be moved and set up in its new position before anything else could happen. Parker said, "This season's going to be all about soul, sleuth, and it's definitely not going the way we thought. This is about the future of the company." Piece by piece, it was slowly assembled like a steel jigsaw puzzle. Crane arms swung carefully. Operators gave hand signals and guided each component into place with precision. Once the plant was situated, it was time to attach the feeder, the vital piece that would send tons of dirt into the wash system. The crew handled the heavy lifting with intense focus. Every movement had to be just right because one mistake could cause days of delays or even damage to the machines. Finally, after a long stretch of nonstop setup, the pieces came together. Big Red was standing, wired, connected, and ready. The next stage was clear. It was time to load the first pay dirt. The crew wasted no time. With the wash plant prepped and power flowing, Jack brought in the excavator and scooped up the very first bucket of the season. All eyes were on the machine as it swung over and dropped the dirt into Big Red's hopper. This wasn't just the start of another workday. It was the first real test of the season. If the pay layer below held gold, and if the plant ran smoothly, it could mean a fast start to what had the potential to be a record-breaking run. Everyone on site understood the pressure. Parker had set one of the largest goals in Gold Rush history, 10,000 ounces of gold. With record high gold prices, that goal was worth around $25 million. But none of that money existed until they pulled actual gold from the dirt. And the only way to get there was to keep those saw boxes running day after day, week after week. Compared to last season, this start was already an improvement. Back then, it had taken far longer to get operations rolling. The team had been constantly relocating equipment, hauling gear across rugged terrain, and setting up from scratch. The process had been exhausting and inefficient. Now, at least, the camp was centralized. The yard was stable. The wash plant was already running. For a moment, there was a sense of calm, like maybe, just maybe, they were finally ahead of the curve. So nice to have Big Red finally fired up, and seeing this per going up these conveyors through this wash plant. And if there was any gold out here in the money pit, guaranteed this wash plant will find it. Big Red looked solid. It was up and running, processing its first loads of gravel and slewing without a hitch. And most importantly, there was pay dirt in the system. With the machines running, and Big Red finally slewing pay dirt, the crew was hopeful. After a high-pressure setup and a chaotic start, the team was anxious to see if Parker's gamble, chasing gold in the old gravel piles from the money pit, was actually going to pay off. This cleanup was their first look at what the season had in store. Chris, one of the most trusted crew members, was tasked with checking the results. Everyone stood by waiting for the numbers that could either boost morale or send the crew into full-on panic mode. And then came the result. Only 5.6 ounces of gold. After 34 hours of non-stop work, hauling, washing, and slewing, that was all they had to show for it. A tiny return worth just $14,000. And just like that, the room fell silent. It was a record-breaking cleanup, but not the kind anyone wanted. This wasn't just a slow start. This was the worst cleanup the crew had ever seen. For a moment, there was nothing but disbelief and frustration. It had taken days of planning, moving, and setting up Big Red. All that effort, the time, the fuel, the manpower now looked like it had been poured into a dead zone. I'm sorry to make you guys do that for that. Now we know, it's not the way we want to start off the year. No, it's a bit problematic, isn't it? The gravel piles that once looked promising had turned out to be nearly worthless. And worst of all, this was how they were starting the season, with a target of 10,000 looming over them. Parker's team was now stuck at just 5.6. That meant they still had 9,994.4 left to go, and the clock was already ticking. What made things worse was how much this false start had cost them. Not just financially, but in momentum. Every misstep, every wasted day pushed them further behind. In a season where they had almost no margin for error, this kind of result could be devastating. Resources that could have gone into prepping better ground had instead gone into setting up a wash plant in a spot that had little to give. The crew now had to regroup, re-strategize, and somehow recover the lost time. All while the pressure continued to mount. This wasn't the launch anyone had hoped for. But if Parker wanted to have any chance of hitting his massive target, he'd have to dig deeper than ever before.